welcome, Chloe and friends, to Autism Spa. It's a real pleasure to have you here. I've read a lot about what you guys are doing. I've studied a little bit about what your startup is all about. We've kind of come together from some shared connections in the autism and special needs community, especially in the startup community. So I wanted to kind of get the whole group here and hear from you as to your personal background, your stories. How did you get here? And we'll go around the clock with Chloe and then maybe Shannon and then Sharena next. But tell us about what got you into this field.
Thanks for having us here. So as a quick introduction to myself, I'm currently an undergraduate student at USC studying computational neuroscience. And I met Shannon, my co-founder, the freshman year of college when we lived right across from each other in our freshman dorm. And we were both really excited about humanizing technology and really having the potential to create impactful AI systems that can have the potential to really influence human life. And so as we were sort of building a friendship, we learned about David Eagleman's Neosensory company and how they were holding an innovation challenge. And Neosensory is essentially building sensory augmentation systems that are helping deaf people and others augment their perception of particular senses that they're missing. And so when we learned about this opportunity, we got really excited and sort of started brainstorming different augmented or additional senses that we could create with a product like this. And we're learning a lot more about neurodiversity and the potential to really augment emotional perception. And so that's sort of how Valence got its start. We're currently developing AI systems that are sensing vocal emotions that are expressed in virtual and in-person environments and expressing those as various sensory modalities to the end user to help people augment their sense of emotional perception.
Wow. That's amazing. We're going to talk about vocal perceptions a lot, because obviously with the special needs son like mine, understanding and recognizing emotions is a big issue, right? So I want to hear more about that. But Shannon, tell me about how you got into, other than Chloe's story, roommates across across the hallway. You guys just connected and you decided, you know what, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah. So I'm Shannon. Hi. I am a student at USC as well. I'm double majoring in computer science and quantitative biology. So within computer science, I specialize mostly in machine learning and cybersecurity. And then within biology, I do computational neuroscience and computational genomics. So I'm a little all over the place. But Chloe knew that I shared that passion that she has, where we really want to take tech to the next level and integrate it with biology to create these new systems to make both healthcare and just tech in general relevant for all sorts of populations and useful for all sorts of different populations. Chloe knew that I did a bunch of AI work back when we first met. And so she also knew that I was a former biomedical engineering major, so she knew I shared that passion for biology as well. And so when she heard about David Eagleman's developer challenge with Neosensory, she just reached out to me and was like, you seem like the person that would logically be the most interested in this and be the most capable to kind of partner on our first project and our first iteration of this app. So we just kind of were brainstorming different types of communities that could be helped with a technology like this. And we landed on the autistic community.
Wow. So Sharena, you saw these two and they said, hey, they're having too much fun. I want to jump in and have some fun with biomedical engineer. Oh my God, these words you're using are just going way over my head. So I'm glad I have three smart people here to explain what we're going to be talking about here together. But Sharena, how did you get involved with these two?
I guess that the story starts way, way, way before the story, because I've been fascinated with human behavior for a lot of my life. When I was in middle school, I started writing a documentary on how humans behave and my ideas for why they behaved the way they did. And this fascination with human behavior eventually drew me to the field of neuroscience. I was pursuing this PhD in neuroscience at the University of Michigan and recently graduated with it. So during that time, I had co-founded a tech company in autonomous vehicle software called INTVO, pedestrian behavior prediction, giving real-time alerts to the driver. So then, okay, Eventually, there is valence, and I find that it exists and that they're trying to do something else in human behavior, which is emotions from tone of voice. My research as a PhD student really focused around how the brain makes sense of inner and outer worlds. And I thought that this kind of application in emotional perception may be a good way to take this into the world and do something good with it.
Wow. So that is how the three of you got together, right? So, and you all kind of seemed like you complete each other in some different ways, right? Everyone's got a different expertise, some overlap. So
Yeah.
now, Chloe, I'm going to ask you to do something very, very difficult. Explain this in a really simple way. So a non-biomedical engineer, non-neuroscientist, non-engineering anything can understand what it is that your product or service really does.
So we are looking at patterns in your voice to discern how you are using those patterns to express your emotions. And then we're delivering the emotions of people that you're speaking with and of yourself to the wearer of our wristband or the user of our Zoom application. So essentially helping people understand the emotions of those they're speaking with and of themselves as they're expressing them to other people.
Right. So you're kind of mapping the vocal patterns of people, and you're trying to. Okay. So explain to me where the wristband comes into play, and what role does that play? And of course, pitch to Shannon or Sharena on anything you want. I'm just starting with you, and you can
Sounds
punch.
good. So essentially the wristband is for our application in real world settings. So it's functioning as a sensory augmentation tool, enabling people to receive emotions as an added sense. So essentially when each emotion is interpreted from the vocal patterns, it's then being relayed to the wristband, which is connected to your phone via Bluetooth. And the emotion is expressed as a unique vibration on the wristband.
So Shannon, how does this? I'm still curious. I mean, I'm wearing an Apple Watch. I have no idea how it works. I know it's touching my skin, and I assume it, counts how many steps I walk, or it can do much more eventually. But how does the wearable connection? How does that work a little bit more? How is that engineered? Or do you guys do it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we use Neosensory's wristband, the Buzz wristband, which is built specifically, Sharena showing it down there.
Right.
It's built specifically to deliver haptic feedback to the user. So it has 4 very sensitive high throughput motors that can deliver all sorts of temporospatial vibrations, meaning instead of just thinking about the frequency that each motor is outputting, it's also the space on your wrist in which it outputs those vibrations. And so the wrist has a lot of sensory receptors and is very good at detecting these temporospatial vibrations. And so what we've done is we map each of our emotions that our neural net outputs to a specific vibrational pattern on the wristband that the user can go through. We have like a training section so they can go through and learn the vibrations and which one they're associated with. And the vibrations are also built out to resemble kind of like a touch pattern that is somewhat similar or somewhat related to each specific emotion. So for something like anger, it's a bit more abrupt and all at once, as opposed to something like surprised, which is a little bit more of like a low frequency to high frequency kind of feeling.
Right. It doesn't shock you. It simply vibrates ever so slightly in different patterns. So, Sharena, you're the only one with the cool toy there. So you're gonna have to explain how. I mean, I saw the 4 bumps under it. So I'm kind of curious as you have it on, and I assume you guys are testing it every day. How do you, as someone that wears it, how do you like it? I mean, is this something that is I don't know. How do you think people will like it? How do you think physically having that thing on their wrist arm they'll do?
Well, the good thing is that it communicates emotions emotionally. So it does match up with how people typically experience emotions. If you think about emotions every emotion, it is expressed, well, by some sort of physical manifestation. People's hearts beat faster if they're excited or if they're nervous. They may feel lighter if they're happier, and really heavy if they are feeling sad or distraught. So having emotions being given by an exogenous signal through a wearable that can be taken on or off, that allows people to interpret things that they haven't been able to interpret from their own bodies.
Right. That's interesting because, as people receive emotional, feedback, I guess, they're growing up, they're developing, maybe they understand those emotions, maybe they don't. But obviously, with kids on the spectrum, they're doubly challenged with understanding and processing those emotions. So to have it cut through the imperfect human brain of even normal people and have it buzz kind of in your wrist, you cut through the middleman. It seems like you cut through, you get to the point, and it sounds like you are training or able to train kids on the spectrum or adults on the spectrum immediately with that vibration, right? Is that, Chloe? Is that how I'm understanding it?
Yeah, I think importantly, we're not focusing on young children because we believe that bodily autonomy is a really important thing for any intervention to any person. And so a lot of products in the market are focusing on behavioral frameworks to essentially train autistic people to express themselves in a more neurotypical way. And that's certainly not what we're trying to do. And so we're focusing on adolescents and adults that are capable of consenting to using this product themselves and guiding their own experience in learning these emotions. That self-guided approach is really important for being able to integrate this new type of sensory information in a way that makes meaningful sense, in a way that is honoring your autonomy. The wristband, as Sharena was showing, it has a plus and a minus button, which enables you to sort of function or change the intensity of the vibrations similar to the function of a volume. And this is really important because autistic and neurodivergent people have specific sensory needs that are very unique to the individual, which can be adjusted by using the wristband and sort of adjusting in real time what intensity they'd like to be receiving at that time.
Right. So thanks for that correction. Yes.
It's also important to note that 10% of the population of people in general have alexithymia, which is that they can't read emotions very well. They may have a hard time naming the emotions of other people or themselves because they may have some sort of mind-body disconnect. And a product like Valence, it can help 10% of people, even if they aren't autistic.
Right. That's a very good point. The reason I was explaining the middleman and even like my flawed brain, people misperceive perceptions all the time.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not on the spectrum. They just, because there's nothing more complicated than human emotion. And the three of you are throwing yourselves in the middle of that, trying to create more order out of something that is just inherently chaotic and subjective. You're creating an objective channel to communicate and help, like you say, adolescents and adults being able to better relate to their environment. Really, I mean, when they're interacting with other human beings, flawed, and I'm talking about typical non. We're all flawed. We all have our own problems. We just can't see it, and there's certainly no label on our forehead running around that like I could be disorganized and I don't pay attention to anyone I talk to, and I don't have a label on my forehead, but that's me. Sometimes I really understand and value and respect obviously your core mission. Now let me get to the company. You guys are pulling together, you're creating a startup. Tell me about the structure of the company. Where are you in your startup life cycle, and what are you really looking for?
So We're an early stage company. We were formed a year ago. We incorporated as a public benefits corporation in Delaware, and we're currently in sort of the idea validation stage where we're going through numerous clinical studies to test our product in various populations. We also currently have 2 products. So we've discussed at length the sensory augmentation product, which is using the neosensory buzz currently, working to expand that to the Apple Watch, which will be more of a consumer wellness product. But we're also creating a similar application of our vocal emotion AI for online environments, because I think the world is really split right now, where some of the world is very much in person and needing that day-to-day human touch interaction. But there's also a lot of the world that is still existing primarily in the Zoom format or formats similar to that. And so we're creating a Zoom plugin that will enable us to create emotional subtitles that can also function in a similar way as you're on your Zoom call. And so we're sort of focusing on those 2 primary applications right now. We're about to launch a trial of our Zoom plugin in the next 2 months. So we're very excited to get geared up for that. And that's what we're focusing on right now.
So Shannon, what would you hope to achieve with this company? I mean, what is your greatest aspiration? Where would you want to see it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely down the line, I just want to see it helping people. I would love to see it have a more general use case, not only by the autistic and the neurodivergent community, but just by neurotypical people, because there's so many problems that are just caused by miscommunication.
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to see it, especially as something that's more readily available on like Apple Watch, Fitbit, other wristbands, so you can give it to a wider audience, and is just a fairly well-known Zoom plugin for people like that. Somewhere down the line, we're hoping for possible acquisition in the future. And we're just hoping that other people can kind of see the value of emotional computing that we do.
Wow. Thank you. So Sharena, what are you trying to make sure this company does right, and the pitfalls that you're trying to help them avoid falling into?
When it comes to creating an emotional passport, well, effective communications and the way that they're interpreted, it can go so wrong in so many ways.
Right.
But at the same time, it can do a lot to create an empowering narrative in terms of really connecting people to each other. So for example, cross-cultural communications, they can be enhanced through this. Communications between people, even within a household, who just express emotions differently from each other, that can help people to actually get a situational understanding. So one thing that is important is to have a closed loop system where possible, where we collect the baseline of individuals and collect the ranges of emotions that they tend to express. Some people, they aren't very expressive in terms of emotion, or they don't express it on their faces very well. But emotions from tone of voice, they tend to be somewhat better. You can get things like accents, which would give you some of their cultural context and something about their background and what people tend to express emotions like in one country versus another, so that people can actually understand things a little bit more. And the story that is being told through this company, I think it's very beautiful, this sense of connection.
Wow. I mean, nothing less than world peace. It could be a derivative of this model, which you're now going through validating and doing studying to make sure it works and is applicable and meets all the standards that it should. So timeline-wise, where are you going to be in 6 months, in 1 year? What's next?
Yeah, we hope to be launched in 6 months. That's our goal, at least for the Zoom plugin. We are going through the process of several clinical studies. And so we're allowing the results from that to guide our development to make sure that we are creating the most optimized user experience that will truly be helping people augment their emotional perception in the most optimized way possible. But that's sort of our goal in terms of launch timelines. But in the interim, we will be continuing to test with our existing user population. We just completed a pilot study for 2 months, and those people are continuing to test our product for the next 6 months and continuing to give us feedback throughout that time.
Great. So Shannon, if let's say everything goes according to plan, are you looking for investors right now? Is there, if someone is a autism entrepreneur, should they reach out to you? Is that something you guys would be interested in?
Yeah, I mean, we love to receive people reaching out to us. We can't comment on raises actually because of SEC guidelines. But yeah, we would love any recommendations or connections to investors.
Yeah,
Right.
and if anyone as well is just interested in like learning about our product or more about us and the company, also feel free to reach out.
And your website is what?
ValenceVibrations.com.
It will be
It's
under
just the
our
company
blog.
name.
Yeah. It will be under our blog. So, Sharena, any last words of advice? I mean, this might not be the only company you're involved in. There could be others. There's so much to do in this field. I think you could easily spend all your time helping, autism startups get going.
I could, but this is the only one that I do.
This is your favorite one.
Absolutely.
Nice.
I think that it's wonderful the respect that Shannon and Chloe have had for neurodivergent communities from the very beginning. And that seems to be rare, where most people, they target just the parents,
Right,
who may be paying for these products. But there are many, many neurodivergent adults who could make their lives better, who are really hard to do market research on because they just simply don't talk about their condition with anyone.
right,
So there is a lot of potential here.
right. No, I appreciate it. And as I said, as a parent of a neurodivergent child, and that's why my perspective is always child related, of course, one day he'll be an adult, he'll be a grown man, he'll be looking down on me from his 6'5" frame. I don't know. But I'm so gratified that there are so many people working on trying to improve his life and tap into his potential contributions, because that's really, what we're getting at. We're trying to tap into that. And also, I really like the added awareness and respect that other parts of the community are giving to the neurodivergent community. For years, I talked to a lot of parents who got into doing something for this community because of frustrations with their kid being left behind, being labeled, being warehoused, is what one doctor called it. A psychiatrist who devoting his life to helping special needs autistic kids said, my kid was warehoused in the educational system that they relegated him to. So this is kind of the norm, and this is what parents deal with. And so I'm glad that people are focused on the individual and whatever that person's full potential is. And this is just one very, very essential tool to help them make sense of the confusing human emotions around them, which are confusing to typical adults, let alone, neurodivergent community. So any parting words, Chloe, Shannon, Sharena, what is it that you want to leave folks with?
I think just on the topic of neurodiversity, I think it's so important for people to recognize that neurodivergent people aren't broken. Right. There's not something wrong with them. There's not an underdeveloped part of their brain that needs to be fixed. They simply function, think, process, sense, and experience things differently than other people. And that means that their environments and the tools that they use need to be optimized with their brains in mind. And the reason why we're seeing so much stigma is not because there's something inherently wrong with being autistic, but rather because our societal structures are not designed with the autistic brain in mind.
Right.
And I think that what's so important and valuable about what we're doing is that we can customize our AI systems and our user experience to individuals to meet their exact sensory needs and sort of larger processing needs. And I think that that's really valuable for not just neurotech companies, but society in general when designing systems to help people live better, more productive and healthy lives.
Right.
Yeah, and I think something important to add on to this too is there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's lots of it. And one of the big ones is that autistic people just don't understand emotions and can't feel empathy, which is completely false.
Right.
There have been numerous studies to debunk that. And essentially what we've learned too with speaking with our users and just all of the research we've done is that once these neurodivergent people have a tool that can tell them how someone is feeling, they're able to respond to it in whatever way they deem fit. We're not in any way trying to tell them how to respond to it. We just feel that having this information, and from what we've seen, having this information can make a big difference in their lives and how they interact with the people around them.
Right. Sharena, any parting words?
Autistic people are not necessarily children at all. And it's important to remember that they exist everywhere through all slices of society.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you for really helping to recognize people like my son, who I wouldn't change a single thing on his hair, as we, like grandma used to say, I wouldn't change a single hair on your head. He is as perfect to me. And I'm so glad that you guys are doing everything you can to help his community better interact with their world. So it sounds like we have a lot more to learn about the divergent community than maybe they have to learn about us.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sharena, Shannon, and Chloe for coming to Autism Spa, sharing your company story. We're going to keep in touch. We're going to hope for your growth and continued investment by potential investors and see this thing kind of mainstream, on wrists like your Apple Watch. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
You.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.